there, and welcome back to the Complicated Kids podcast. I'm your host, Gabriele Nicolet. I am a toddler whisperer, a speech therapist, and a parent coach. And today I have Scotti Weintraub with me. Scotti, welcome.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
I am so glad that you're here because even though we are airing this in the summertime, we are going to talk about things that we can be thinking about now for school. Is that right?
It is. And as we record this, we're only a few days into our own summer break. So it feels a little counterintuitive,
Yeah.
but
But
I promise it's actually a really good idea.
perfect. Before we jump in, would you tell the good people something about yourself and what you do?
Sure, I'm Scotty. I'm a parent coach and school navigator. I help parents of kids in K-12 school who are having a hard time for a lot of different reasons. I help their parents find roadmaps to school success.
Nice. I love it. And of course, we will have stuff and we'll talk about links later. But in the summer, what can we? I'm not even going to say should we, because there are no shoulds. You and I both know we're coaches.
Yes.
We don't should on people.
No, we do not.
But what do we have the opportunity to think about in terms of school success and kids who need a little extra in that regard?
Well, I think it's a big chance for all of us to take an exhale. And if the school year has been challenging for you and your child for any number of reasons, you really want a break. And I am there with you. I'm ready for the summer break too. But while we're having that exhale, it's actually a really good time to be reflective. So we have some time and some space, some mental capacity. We're not, potentially running our kids to is all of their sports activities and helping with homework. Maybe we get a vacation, which is also, a lovely thing. But that just gives us a little more mental space to be reflective about what happened in the last school year. What happened that was really good, and even just take a little piece of paper, write it down, or open your notes app and jot down what went really well for your child last year. Was it that they fell in love with science? Was it that they like found books that were really exciting for them? What about school really caught their imagination and their attention? And then take a little bit of time to also think about the reverse of that. What things were hard? What could have been easier? And that's like taking that bigger picture look is really useful information moving forward. So I think the first thing I would say is just, relax into the summer, but think a little bit about what happened and start there.
I love what you just said. For the positives, when you were talking, I was like, yeah, did they fall in love with science? And the part you're not going to write down at first, which you might be tempted to skip the part where they fell in love with science because their science teacher was such a jerk to them. So,
Yes.
so in some cases, lots of cases, because school is a mixed bag in lots of different ways, you might be splitting out like the wheat from the chaff, right? The positives from the particulars of the situation. Um,
Yes, for
and
sure.
and so, do you want to talk about that a little bit? Like, what sparks when I say that?
Yeah, well, I think that's really important to not think about it being just one particular situation because
Mhm.
if your child fell in love with science last year, it might be that, a particular part of it, they really loved the studying of animals, for instance, whatever that might be. Um, you know, Focusing on that instead of, yeah, but they had conflict with the teacher or, the homework proved really difficult. I think sometimes especially if your kid struggles at school, you spend a lot of time thinking about the negatives and not so much time thinking about the positives. And so that's why I mentioned positives first, because I think you'll probably agree with me that we want to focus on strengths.
Mhm.
And it can also feel really good for us as parents to think about the good things about our kids because we know they're there, right? We see them as in their, whole complicated selves as they're funny and creative and uh, curious and loving and all of these things. But then when we focus only on the problems at school, it can be really easy to like narrow our perspective. When really what that driver, that love of science in this example, is going to carry forward with them past the teacher, past whatever that circumstance was.
I'm also thinking about kids who are really love things that are non-academic, like
Hmm.
allowing us ourselves to also embrace that as a success without the even those, right? I call them the yeah buts.
Hmm. When your kids struggle, there are a lot of and buts,
Yeah,
right? A
yeah.
lot. And it's an easy trap to fall into to focus on those.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, I feel like my mom heart wants me to also acknowledge the good, you know,
Yeah.
and the interesting and the funny and the loving and the all of the great things too, and not lose sight of those. So, but you mentioned all those things that are not school, and I love talking about this point because there are so many learning opportunities that are not school, that I like to call summer and opportunities that happen in summer a vacation from failure. Because when you are a kid who school is really hard and everything about it makes you feel not so great about yourselves, and we know that this happens to some kids, to go to summer camp where you don't have to sit still, where you can just explore the things that are fun, where you get to build relationships. That's that vacation, right? You get to be successful.
I
And
love
that's
that.
I
So,
I love summer camp for that reason because I saw my own kid who struggled in school stand so much taller after some time in an atmosphere where the expectations really met where he was at,
mm-hmm. Yeah,
that it just reinforced like, wow, there is learning to happen, and character development and leadership and all of those great things that are not one of, reading, writing, or arithmetic. All of those
it's
great things can happen elsewhere too.
it's such a good point. Like, I mean, I love that. First of all, a vacation from failure is lovely. Um, and it occurs to me, if you just listened to that and thought, well, my kid can't go to camp, they wouldn't do well at camp. That's okay. We find them something else
Yes.
from which they can have their vacation from failure.
Yes. It can
Okay.
it can look like a lot of things.
Yeah.
It can look like sports or theater or, a Pokemon club. It, it can be a lot of different things.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So focusing on the positives
Yes.
and kind of doing a 30,000 feet assessment, starting with positives and also sort of noticing, okay, what didn't go well and why potentially.
If
What
you know,
else? Yeah.
I think that those are just really valuable data points. And
Mhm.
and I think it's important too not to like put too much weight on them as, as a value thing, or it's just data,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
It's just like information. Then what do we do with that information? And that's another thing you can do during the summer is think about how you want to convey those data points to next year's school team. And it doesn't have to be long or complicated, right? But make a brief plan to um, communicate that information, that what you know about your kid, how they're most successful, where they shine, and communicate that in the first couple weeks of school with their teacher or teachers. Um, so coming up with a plan of like, okay, I know this information about my kid. How am I going to communicate with, maybe that's the classroom teacher, maybe if you have a 504 or an IEP with those teams, just making like a quick plan for yourself, maybe put it in your calendar, send an email so it doesn't get lost. Beginning of school year is a big shuffle for everyone. New routines and you feel really chaotic. So, one thing I learned recently, I didn't know how to do this before, was to schedule emails in advance. And it felt kind of revelatory, right? Like, oh, I could write something now and just schedule it to send.
I
So
still don't use that enough, but I know
I
what
know,
you mean. I feel the same way.
I know, maybe this is dating myself, of course,
Mm.
but If so you could even just draft an email in July and hit it to send, this the first week of school.
Yeah.
That way, don't have to think about it again.
That's awesome. In fact, I literally just got off a call with a family to whom I recommended, like, hey, we're going to do a meeting before school starts to kind of set the tone and, sort of give some pointers. I think the energy that we come with around that email or that conversation is really important. And so I just want to pause here for, I don't know how you coach people through this, and I'd be curious to hear, but um, I'm, what I want for parents is to come, and if you're watching this on YouTube, I have my hands kind of open in an open, non-confrontational posture, meaning here, here we are, here's our stuff. We are entrusting you to take care of us. And it's coming with a really open energy rather than here's a list of do's and don'ts. Here's what I need you to do for my kid. Here's how they struggled last year, and fix it, damn it.
Yes, I will agree with you 1,000% that the way you do the communicating is very, very important.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really, I was just talking to someone this morning about this piece about how communication with schools is not a lot different than the way you'd want to be communicated with in a professional setting or in an interpersonal relationship, right? No one wants you coming in hot because it just shuts people down. If you come in saying, this is my demand, this is what, got screwed up last year, and you better make it right. That does not set you up for a year of collaboration, right? That just shuts doors. And, if you talk to teachers, they all have stories of parents who have been demanding and unreasonable in those ways.
And if you talk to parents, they have had experiences with teachers who
Yes.
have been closed off and blamatory. That's not a word, but I'm making it a word, and unhelpful. And so,
Yes. It's
right,
a
like,
it's a very difficult balance, but I think if you go into it, this is my tip I always talk to parents about is assuming good intent.
yeah,
So we are going to just assume that that the new teacher or
yeah,
teachers, that they want the best for your child,
yeah,
that they want to hear how your child succeeds, that they are willing to partner with you. So we're just going to start with like a very positive mindset. Um, and as you pointed out, sometimes that isn't always the case, but we're going to assume good intent.
yeah,
And I think my other point is always to lead with curiosity. And if you ask questions instead of making demands, it opens up those conversations. So if you say, this is what I observed last year was happening, and these points were challenging, how do you think we might be able to address it in the new year? That's an opening. That's not a you fix it. That's an invitation to collaboration.
yeah. And actually, what I'm hearing is maybe part of this, like, pluses and wins and kind of assessment period is, what questions do I want to know? What questions do I want to ask my new team, my
Hmm.
kids' new team, about
Yes.
how what they think about this opportunity? But there is something I want to go back and just kind of plug in for a second, which is, and I know this happens with your clients as well. If you're listening to this and you're feeling really stuck, you're like, they're never going to listen to me. They're never going to figure out my kid. The school's too big. They don't care, blah, like a whole litany of like negative thoughts running through your head. That gets dealt with first before you go into a meeting, because you will arrive with all that stuff coming off of you, and it's not going to be helpful.
Right. It's also, yes, absolutely. And it's also true that we as parents bring our own stuff to these meetings, right? Our past experiences, our own, I was telling you, I just launched a podcast and my newest episode is about grades. And in that episode, I talk about how sometimes grades feel really personal because we have our own school baggage, right?
Yes.
So that can be true in teacher meetings too, that we bring our own school experience into the room.
Mhm.
Anything that didn't work well for us, it's sort of like in the back of our brain. So the best we can do is to try to, yeah, as you said, like deal with our own feelings. And that's kind of what I help parents do is like work through how can we best meet our kids' needs by focusing on those and not get caught up in all of that stuff.
And even just knowing that can happen. Like, I'm not sure that I'm, in fact, I am sure that before I became a parent, I did not at all understand how much my own childhood was going to figure into my reactions, how I felt about things, even my children's activities, like what I thought they should do. And then they had a different idea. And I was like, huh?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, very much so. Yeah, and it's that stuck place that is really hard for people because they say, well, that was easy for me. Why can't they just turn in their homework?
Yeah. Why can't
I
they
got straight
just?
A's. Why can't they get straight A's?
Mhm.
And that's where we get that stuck spot where we're not really seeing the present situation and we're not really seeing our kids fully because we're kind of too trapped in our own expectations and experiences, um, which, can be um, they can come in positive ways too, but if we stay in that stuck spot of, well, they just should, go back to your point about shoulding, they should be able to do X, Y, or Z. That isn't really seeing who they are. That's more about us.
Yeah. And it's just, it comes up all the time. It's like,
It does.
well, that's why we have jobs. So, okay. So, bird's eye view, maybe some questions, maybe schedule an email in July. Oh my God. And what else? Kind of in this season of pause before when there's not a regular schedule.
Find some time to enjoy your kid. Like just have fun, because I think especially when your kids have challenges, whatever that looks like, as we talked about, you can get stuck in the negative, you can get stuck in the problems or the therapy appointments or the whatever it looks like. So summer is a perfect time to just enjoy them. Find a fun activity, go out for ice cream, whatever that looks like. Go on a bike ride, because being a parent should also be fun and not just work.
Say to parents who say to you, I can't. There's so much that I need to work on this summer. I know.
And I say start really, really small.
Okay. Yeah.
Start very small. Say, okay, we're gonna make pancakes on Saturday morning. We have to cook breakfast anyhow. How about you have your kid help you? Or make smiley faces with chocolate chips. Whatever that small piece of fun, let them squirt the whipped cream. Um, I think everyone can find tiny ways to incorporate a little fun and meaningful time with their kids, even when you feel stretched thin.
It's such a good point to start small because I think immediately when we say, find joy, have fun with your
Oh,
kids,
geez.
like, we have to go to the amusement park. Clearly, that's the
No,
only option.
no, it does not have to be that. It doesn't have to be a big vacation. It doesn't have to be a whole weekend away. It just has to be like little moments of connection.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things I'm working on for the summer, which may be around this time that this airs, is a time in program to
Mm.
to help parents spend those little moments, those tiny chunks of time that are vacations from failure, that are opportunities for connection, and to really see who's in front of you. And so I love what you're saying about, like, let them squirt the whipped cream. It's a huge win.
Yeah,
Like, just little.
yeah, just little. And honestly, if I'm thinking back to my own childhood, it's all those little things that I remember.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's not the big trip, is it?
No, I mean those were fun when we had them, but no, I remember playing in the garden and helping my mom peel peaches in August every year, and she would get like a whole box of peaches and we would process them. Just like I remember those littler things
Mm-hmm.
as being also very meaningful. So I just encourage people not to see it as only the big or expensive or time consuming things.
And what about back to this, like, if I don't overthink my kid's school experience? In other words, maybe I'll give myself a week off from like the churn of academia for my kid. But like, what about this? It's okay to pause idea. Do you find that
Hmm.
this is hard for people? Like, what do you see here?
Um, for some people, yes, it is hard. I think, especially when you're getting all that feedback from whether it's from teachers or other professionals, other parents sometimes saying your kid did X, Y, or Z, or they have this problem or this behavior or whatever that looks like, and it's coming at you pretty regularly. That feels really overwhelming and urgent. But it doesn't what we also know about like mental health and our own sanity is that sometimes like we need downtime, right? We need a break too. And it's best you can to give yourself that time and space. Um, I think it will pay off.
Yeah. Yeah. I 100% agree with you. I watched a video this morning. You cannot pour from an empty cup.
Right. And to your earlier point, it's easy to say, and I'm not suggesting that a bubble bath will solve very complex issues in your home or family life, but uh, making pancakes with your kid is a bright spot that you both will enjoy. That's something.
There's also this lie that our brains tell us that like we have to spend all the time, all the minutes perseverating, planning, making lists, situation, like triaging. What's it called? There's a word for it, but I'm not getting it. Where we think about all the eventualities and all the possible. It is objectively true, even if you think that that's the case. It is objectively true that not all of your time needs to be spent that way. And so, like, whatever feels manageable to your brain, to pause from that is a really, really good thing. And the more we do it, I mean, this is the thing, right? About spotting the wins or any kind of taking time, the more we do it, the better we'll get at it
Hmm.
and the less threatening it'll feel. Um, so I
And the more
just,
we can feel replenished and better able
yeah,
to have those conversations in calm ways,
yeah,
to come, with our best intentions.
yeah.
If we have taken the time to take the deep breaths to get ourselves regulated in whatever way works for us, um, you know, that's us showing up in our best parenting selves.
Yeah. Scotti Weintraub, if people want to work with you, find out more about you, get on your list, what do they do?
Thank you for asking. They can go to my website. It's just reframeparenting.com. And there I have a school support style quiz you can take, which is kind of fun. It's all based on the Golden Girls. So are you a Dorothy? Are you a Blanche? You can answer some questions about your natural style of supporting your kids at school and find out which Golden Girl you are, which is kind of fun. And as I mentioned, I also just launched my own podcast. I would love for folks to check it out. It's called Unlocking School Success. You can find it both on my website, but also on any of your regular podcast players.
Awesome. All right. And we will link to all of that in the show notes. Scotti, it was such a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for a great conversation.